ever been to a motivational seminar, read a self-help book or inspirational quote, got all pumped up, set some goals, committed to get rich, get fit, get healthy, transform your life, and then found yourself a couple of days later in exactly the same place, sitting on your couch, eating chips? You're not alone. We all, I think, want to be successful. Would love to have the perfect body and the perfect relationship. But after 16 years of researching self-leadership, I can tell you that it's not easy. But it is worth it, and there is a framework to achieve it. I wonder if I could have my deck up on the back. That would be fantastic. Let me take you back to the year 2000. I'm standing at a bus stop in Sydney, Australia, and I'm not happy. I'm not happy because in the previous 6 months, my life, as I knew it, was in the toilet. I had gone from entrepreneur to broke, $300,000 in personal debt. I had lost my dream of success. I had lost my company. I'd lost my savings, my house, my car. I'd failed my marriage. I lost my sense of self-esteem and confidence. I felt stupid. I felt angry. I felt life wasn't fair. I didn't like myself, and I certainly didn't want to be around other people. It starts to rain, and the inner voice inside my head says, could it get any worse? The bus arrives. I step on board, and I'm greeted with a big smile. Isn't it a great day? And my inner dialogue is listing all of the ways it's not a great day for me. But I shrug and take my seat. I look around, and people are smiling at me. And I don't know how you feel. That's kind of weird on public transport. And isn't it annoying when people smile at you when you're in a bad mood? And I watch the pattern as people board the bus. And the same pattern repeats. They step on board. The driver says, isn't it a great day? And some, like me, are kind of taken aback. And others say, yes, it is, John, because John obviously had his regulars. Let me fast forward to just earlier this year. I was queuing up for my coffee in a well-known coffee franchise. And I order my tall, non-fat latte, hand over my cash for my overpriced designer coffee. And the girl behind the counter, in an uncharacteristic tone for that franchise, says, are you having a good day? Now, I'm wondering, my internal dialogue is saying, is that her question or is that corporate policy? But I felt for her because I'd been there where you're supposed to smile, but inside you just feel like dying inside. And I took my coffee, sat at the table, and as I was sipping my coffee, I realized how far I'd come. And I remembered John, the bus driver, who was constrained by his job, his role, his route, but was exercising autonomy in his attitude. He was influencing and impacting people. I mean, everybody who got off the bus that day had a smile on their face. And for the first time in months, so did I. We don't get a lot of early choice or autonomy about who we are. Do you remember your birth? Well, let me remind you what happened. Within a few seconds of coming into this world, you got smacked on the bum and made to cry. That really should have been an omen, shouldn't it? But then, within a few moments, you are given a name, a gender, a nationality, an ethnicity, and possibly a religion and a football team to follow. You have been framed. You have been given what we call a personal construct, which is the way you're going to look out at the world and receive the world from that moment on. You've been framed. But did you choose? No, you didn't. You didn't choose your DNA, what we call biogenic traits. You didn't choose your family and environment, what we call sociogenic traits. So is it any wonder that it's actually quite hard to be yourself? A frame is a structure. Glasses frames hold lenses in place. A picture frame holds a canvas in place. And if the frame is not correct, you don't get to see the picture in all of its glory. But unlike a picture, the human mind has many, many frames. You have value frames, beliefs, understandings, realizations, history, culture, and finally, identity. Frames are everywhere, and you recognize them by the narrative or the inner dialogue that you have. You may have heard things like, big boys don't cry, be a man. Or, be a good girl, find a husband, and then you will be valuable. If you're experiencing some pain in your life, or you're not where you think you should be, it's likely there's a frame at play. And the question I have for you is, how can you be yourself when somebody else is writing the script? Back in 2000, sitting on that bus, I realized I had been framed. I'd been framed by my own failure. I was broke. But I wasn't poor. I wasn't poor in experience or education. And I realized it was time to get back in the driver's seat of my life and to stop being a passenger. With my experience and training in physiology, in psychology, and linguistics, I began to research a framework on how we could drive our own life. And as I researched all of the books, the leadership books, I recognized that they all contained this huge list of traits that you have to be successful. And some of those lists were so long, they might as well have included, must be able to perform miracles. Perhaps that's on your job description. The self-help books were no better. The self-help books were full of prescriptions. Just follow these 7 steps and you will be rich, successful, fit, fill in the blank. But with a medical background, I know that prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. We don't need a formula, we need a framework. And so with my co-author back in 2011, published in 2012, Dr. Anna Kazan, we worked on a framework for self-leadership. Self-leadership is the practice of intentionally influencing your thinking, your feeling, your actions. Simply put, influencing yourself to achieve your objectives. But when I first started talking about self-leadership, people would say to me, self-leadership, that sounds selfish. I don't think so, and here's why. Imagine you're on a commercial airliner, you're at 40,000 feet, you're watching the in-flight movie, and then bang! The oxygen masks do fall from the ceiling. You place them over your nose and mouth before assisting others? Why is it that the pre-flight briefing goes on and on about that? Because you can't help others unless you first help yourself. Self-leadership is not selfish. We need oxygen before we can give oxygen to others. Self-leadership starts with self-awareness. What is the oxygen that you need to be the best you, to be passionate, to be alive, to be in the flow? And what are the frames that are choking off that oxygen for you? For me, my journey of self-awareness was that, well, I needed to feel important to have a sense of self-worth. And when I got over that frame, I realized I could become a recovering narcissist. And when that frame was taken care of, then I could get the oxygen from helping other people. To be yourself, you need to create space, psychological space, because this 9 inches between your ears is the most expensive real estate you will ever have. But I'm British. And wherever the British go, anywhere in the world, they will put down their towel on the beach and they've captured that bit of the beach for England. you laugh. But here in Singapore, you put down your packet of tissues on a food court table, and you've captured that table for yourself. You need psychological space so that you can be yourself. And if somebody tries to put a frame upon you, or one pops up in your mind, you need to say stop, like a traffic policeman standing in front of a truck. And then you can escape the frames that bind you. You can begin to be yourself. As I was preparing for this talk, I called a friend in Israel who had himself done a TEDx just very recently entitled "The Cancer That Died of Laughter." He had chosen to say stop to the frame of cancer, and his oxygen was laughter, which he used to beat his cancer. As Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and Man's Search for Meaning author, said, the last of all human freedoms is the ability to choose our attitude regardless of the circumstances. You can't lead others unless you first lead yourself. Research is showing us what I think you would already realize, that we have lost trust in our institutions. And is it any wonder when many of these institutions and organizations are led by leaders that cannot lead themselves? Working with the top world companies, I can tell you that they are hungry for, in need of, more and better leaders. Leaders that can lead themselves. Leaders that can take responsibility and ownership of their thinking, feeling, and actions. Leaders who can become more intentional and therefore more influential and therefore more impactful. You can't lead others unless you lead yourself. There are so many inspirations for us to be self-leaders, people who have written their own story and fought to be themselves. J.K. Rowling was a single mother fighting to survive on welfare. She wrote a manuscript that was rejected many, many times, but she persevered. And when Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was finally published, she influenced millions of readers and now is a wonderful philanthropist. Muhammad Ali started his journey when his bike was stolen as a boy. He vowed to find the thief and fight him, but he bumped into a policeman that told him he needed to learn to box first. And from that moment, he fought for what he believed in, both in and out of the ring, and became, in his own words, the greatest. You will face your own challenges. You may have already faced a challenge. You may have faced failure. You may have fought cancer. You may have been bankrupt, been through divorce, loss of a loved one. It's okay to feel bad, but it's not okay to stay there. Sure, life is not fair, but it's not okay to be a victim. Feel it, and then get back in the driver's seat of your life. My life is very different from the way it was in the year 2000. I am now seeing the loss of my business as a gift, because with it I lost a whole stack of my arrogance. Having said that, I'm now more likely to catch an aeroplane than I am to catch a bus, although ironically this morning I couldn't get a taxi and I got a bus. My oxygen now is a new vision, a new dream. And my dream is to train, empower, and engage 2 million self-leaders by 2020. But I still have to practice self-leadership on a daily basis. A few weeks ago, I was walking my 2 youngest children to the school bus. And I said to them, how can I be a better father? My 9-year-old son, Nathan, didn't hesitate. He looked me straight in the eye and said, you could work a bit less and you could come to more of my school things. That got me straight in the chest, because at that very day, it was his school swimming carnival, and I had booked 2 business meetings. Changing those meetings was not easy, because my old frame of loss of the business I might have had by cancelling them was there. But the new me, who lived by value, said, I will be there. I arrived a few minutes before his first race. He saw me. It was the freestyle. He struggled. He hit the center lane a couple of times, and he came last. I rushed down. I gave him a hug and said, great job, son. Good effort. He didn't care where he came. He cared that I was there. I went back in the stands, and my inner dialogue is going, maybe I should get him a swim coach so he could come first, the competitive frame. But I watched him again, and the next race was the breaststroke, and he won, and I was so proud. But I rushed down, and I realized we were both winners that day. He won an increased sense of self-confidence, and I had an experience that I might not have had if I hadn't have made the right choice. You will need to make daily choices to be a self-leader. So I ask you, will you dare to be yourself? Will you dare to lead yourself? Will you be the best team member, leader, father, mother, sister, brother, lover that you can be? Because you can't lead others unless you lead yourself. Thank you.